Okay, so your book states that 6 key behaviors define excellence in problem solving. Could you talk about those?
Right? Let me start by just sort of defining behaviors because I think it's a word that's used a little sloppy sometimes. And so when I talk about behaviors, a lot of it is this is how I show up, right? This is my habit. This is my routine. This is how I show up. And so what happens is with problem solving, a lot of people think problem solving is just a task, but it's not just a task, right? It's an engagement. We sink ourselves into it. So how we show up, how we behave in an observable way matters a great deal. So the first is learn deliberately is something that's incredibly important from a behavior standpoint because to me all problem solving is about learning. Right? If we knew what we needed to know, it's just an execution problem, right? It's not a problem solving problem. So just execute. If you already know what you need to know, just execute. What's holding you back? Problem solving, by definition, is about either finding the right knowledge or creating the right knowledge, and that means we need a learning strategy. So when we go into problem solving sort of arrogantly, we're kind of missing the point of problem solving. And so that behavior goes all the way from the problem statement to did the solution really give us the result that we wanted. Um, Pursuit, and I'll say next, as if they come sequentially. They don't. I have to write them sequentially because that's how books work. But they should all exist, sort of, all the time or at different times as we go. But next is pursuit of the ideal state. And the ideal state is really just this idea of what good looks like and where are we headed, right? And so what's good enough is one thing, but what's excellent look like? What does perfect look like? What does ideal look like? And are we constantly pursuing that? Um, Otherwise, we just look to get rid of symptoms, right? And so, and how do I just, get through the day? How do I just get back to where I was versus how do I get to excellence? And so that pursuit of the ideal state paints a picture about sort of how aggressively we lean into problem solving, right? And how far we want to go with even what is a problem, right? So many people will talk to, I don't have any problems. Like, well, okay. So I mean everything's perfect? No. Well then you have problems, right? You have gaps between where you are and what the ideal state is. The third is about creativity over capital. And I think we'll hear a lot about this in companies right now as companies are facing a recession or at least the threat of one. Capital is more expensive. Capital is harder to come by. Capital we're trying to reserve for a rainy day because the rainy day is upon us. And so there's a lot of problems that we can solve by just throwing money at it, right? Throwing people at it, throwing equipment at it, throwing our customers unhappy, give them a discount, we've solved the problem. Well, we haven't solved the problem. We've just covered it up with money, right? Whether that be discounts or capital or resources or people, whatever that might be. And the problem is the more we use capital, the less of it we have. Creativity, the more we use it, the more of it we have. We build muscle and strength in that. And so it's not about creativity for creativity's sake. It's not just about originality. Like we don't want to practice not invented here syndrome, but it is about applying and leveraging that creativity to overcome problems that we have. Um, and the fourth is still within problem solving, and that's really around collaboration. As I indicated earlier, most of our problems are not isolated to us, right? Other people at least experience those problems. And to me, I want to say two brains are better than one. Two brains collaborating are better than one, right? Two brains that aren't collaborating are worse than one, right? And we've all experienced resistance and barriers and lack of momentum to collaborate, to cross-functional problem solving. That means that two brains are not better than one because there's all this resistance. But if we get the behavior right around collaboration, two brains are better than one, three brains are better than two. So we get there that way. So that all of that really happens sort of within problem solving. The last couple happen sort of, in and around problem solving. So initiative and ownership, can happen within, but also happens just to pick up a problem, right? Take initiative, right? We see a lot of problems that people see and they just sit there and admire them, right? They acknowledge them, they talk about them, and but they don't say, here's what I can do about it. They may not be able to solve them entirely, right? But they can solve their portion of them, and that's the ownership, right? I don't care if you own 5% of it, solve your 5% of it, right? And so take that ownership, that initiative to move forward. And then the last is really sort of a set, and I thought about writing them separately, but I kind of pulled together the idea of transparency, vulnerability, and trust. Um, these are in some ways outcomes, but also inputs, right? And so trust is more the outcome that comes from vulnerability, transparency, but the idea that we don't do problem solving behind closed doors. We show people what our problems are. We show them that we recognize that we have problems. That alone starts to build some trust. Because whether it's vertically and there's leaders that say, oh, I've got to go drive this team because they don't get that they have gaps. It's like, no, we get that we have gaps. So many people don't want to expose their problems because they think that exposing their problems means, hey, we look incompetent. It's like, no, you look realistic, right? Everybody has problems. You start being more transparent about your problems, then people understand that, oh, you see it too. I thought you didn't see it, right? We thought you didn't see your problems, and we were trying to figure out how to tell you that you had problems. Now that we see that you see it too, okay, now what help do you need, right? It's overcoming these problems. It's even interesting, companies that are transparent with their customers about their product roadmaps. Like, hey, here's things that we're working on. We know you want these features. We're not pretending that the thing we're giving you today is perfect. We want to make it better. And here's our roadmap for doing that. It's amazing. You can't always do that, right? Because competition can see it too. And maybe you're scared about that. Maybe you're not. But just that transparency alone kind of gives customers more confidence around, oh, you get me. You get that I think these are problems and weaknesses in your product, and you want to help solve those in future generations. That's great. Because that doesn't always work, and there's a whole bunch of consequences to that. But it's just an example about that builds trust with customers when you can sort of be transparent around, here's the problems that we see you have that we want to solve in the future. So again, none of that is about the tools, the templates, or anything else. It's the culture that wraps around problem solving and within problem solving that carries the day.